Hi, welcome back. This is your favorite faceless masked commentator. I cover news and give my personal thoughts on issues. If you find my commentary interesting, subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment. Today we're digging into the big question marks hanging over NATO's future. Will America pull the pull out of NATO? The current war put a fat spotlight on our relationship with NATO, and it's pushing the alliance into bad position. We'll walk through the NATO timeline, what both sides have gotten out of this deal, and the latest drama with the Strait of Hormuz. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization is a mutual defense agreement between 30 European states, America, and Canada post-World War II near the Cold War era. Basically, if one of these 32 nations are attacked for any reason, they all will respond as a unit. We're talking military aid, financial support, and any other shared burdens. For the Europeans, it's been the basic fabric of their security against an assertive Russia, especially with eyes on Ukraine. The US, on the other hand, has gotten military bases in Europe, letting America project power whenever national security gets threatened. So far in NATO's history, America have invoked NATO's Article 5 once around 9/11, while Turkey has invoked Article 4 to get consult and intelligence support. Because of our bases, the US has shouldered about 2/3 of the defense spending in the entire alliance. And in return, it's had that ability to use the infrastructure when it needs to act globally. We have invested a lot of taxpayer money into NATO to keep them safe from Russia, who was a big threat through the Soviet Union. NATO members weren't paying anywhere near their share for their own defensive measures. In a funny way, some could consider Trump's tariffs as payback. The alliance has survived plenty of existential challenges before this. Leading up to President Trump's first term, he questioned NATO's core mission, threw around insults, and even considered withdrawing. There were multiple bouts of pressure like that. Plus, in 2024 on the campaign trail, he talked about encouraging Russian President Vladimir Putin to attack members who didn't pay their fair share on defense. But by the last annual NATO summit in June 2025, some appeared to get their act together a bit. Even earlier this year, in January 2026, Trump stepped up threats to wrest Greenland away from Denmark, and the administration made moves Europeans saw as pretty accommodating toward Russia. As you can see, nothing's really of note has happened with NATO outside of 9/11 and Turkey's Iraq and Syria threat. 2026 is different, though, seeing as Donald Trump's military objectives are nearly complete in Iran. He took the opportunity to indirectly ask NATO a very simple question. If America ever needed NATO allies, would they show up? So far, the answer has been no. I'll be generous and give NATO a little credit, though. Let's go back a bit. The U.S.-Israeli air campaign started February 28, 2026, without Trump consulting global allies first, and Iran has managed to largely choke off the Strait of Hormuz through tolls and military aggression. This move shut down over half the world's oil supply. Outside looking in, you could argue Trump started the massive oil price spike, which immediately hitting NATO members. Foreseeing this, NATO allies didn't want any involvement in aiding America in this campaign. They would have to deal with the aftermath of relationship and negations regardless of the outcome of the war after all. They denied giving us troops, they denied us using our own military bases, and even denied us airspace. I understand them refusing preemptively before the war. The big debate came from their response after Iranian leaders were killed. Iran went batshit crazy launching missiles in non-hostile Middle Eastern countries, like a flailing, headless snake. The Middle Eastern countries around Iran, who had taken the same stance as NATO, saw this and realized that Iran is just a bunch of terrorists holding global resources hostage. They decided to walk back their defensive stance. But NATO didn't. They still offered no aid or support after seeing the writing on the wall. The reason this matters so much is because NATO members need the strait open more than America does. I get not wanting in on the action, But it's another when you still deny us our own bases and airspace when the campaign is indirectly to your benefit. They wouldn't even give us minesweepers to help keep the strait open for global oil trade, to which we don't need much of. Trump's gotten increasingly annoyed at Europe's lack of support. Keep in mind that he was already against NATO long before he stepped on the political stage. He posted that countries like the UK should buy jet fuel from the US since we have plenty, or go to the Strait to get their own oil. He specifically called out France for not letting supply planes headed to Israel fly overhead. He told them to start learning how to fight for themselves, because the USA won't be there to help anymore, just like they weren't there for us. Marco Rubio, one of NATO's strongest defenders, appeared on Fox News blasting the alliance and how disappointing they've been. To quote, "If the NATO alliance means the US can't use those bases to defend America's interests, then it's simply a one-way street. The US has poured hundreds of billions, even trillions over the years into those forces, and if in our time of need we're not allowed to use the bases, then why are we in NATO?" There's no doubt the relationship will have to be re-examined. Pete Hegseth echoed similar concerns at a Pentagon news conference. Analysts and diplomats say this is the worst place NATO has been since it was founded. With the Mutual Defense Pact at its core is in question. European officials are pessimistic as they consider NATO without the United States. General François Lecointre, France's former armed forces chief, said NATO must be capable of thinking of itself without the Americans. Jamie Shea, a former senior NATO official, called it a blow to allies who are willing to take more responsibility for their own defense. Legally, Trump may lack the authority to withdraw without 2/3 of the U.S. Senate's consent under a 2023 law, but he can decide whether the U.S. military will defend NATO members and degrading the alliance anyway. My thoughts on NATO are simple. We need to get the hell out. To be clear, pulling out of NATO doesn't mean we stop officially being allies or stop trading with them. Think about this. Nobody likes the idea of being dragged into foreign wars, right? With the current arrangement, the United States is more likely to get dragged into a conflict if something more serious happens. We have nearly 80,000 troops stationed away from home. If we're gonna do that, our relationships can't be shaky. Any deals we make need to be fair and consistently reciprocal. So let's ignore the war and talk about the deal, shall we? NATO was formed to counter Russia's growing influence by bolstering military between 32 countries. Over time, that threat has dissipated, meaning the foundation NATO was built upon needs re-examining. That's strike one. Strike two is the lopsided deal. America gets bases, less military strain, and power projection in the East to deter major conflicts. In exchange, NATO allies get us as their military wing, better military technology and intel, and a chance to redirect their original military funds to economic growth. This worked well, but look at what's happened. We're currently still holding NATO together through our military and finances while having our troops there. Most of NATO nations have been taken over by Muslims and woke ideologies, which are fundamentally against most of our beliefs. We're not even sure what military gains these nations have made over the years. Then there's strike three. They denied us our bases. I repeat, our bases. We built them with American taxpayer money. It's one thing to not let us use their equipment, but denying us use ours smells like freeloading. The thing that really got me was airspace. Us flying overhead wouldn't have cost them anything in any way, yet they restrict us. What the hell were they gonna do if we ignored and did it anyway? It's not like they would have had the balls to shoot us down or retaliate. Maybe write a strongly worded letter to wipe our ass with. Again, I'm willing to give some benefit of the doubt to NATO. If the original goal of the deal was to give them time to develop economically, then a weak military makes sense. I remember seeing a clip of a UK defense minister fumbling his words when asked on air how many warships they had on hand. Another consideration goes back to my bias against Muslims. It's an open secret that most of NATO has been taken over by Muslims and woke ideologies. Look no further than King Charles skipping out on their Easter message in favor of a Ramadan address back in February. It makes sense leaders would be pressured or lobbied to stay out of the war. The more likely explanation is Trump derangement syndrome because of how woke they are. But I digress. This the situation now, folks, and it leaves a lot open about where NATO goes from here. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that subscribe button, drop a like if it got you thinking, and let me know your take in the comments below. See you in the next one.